Welcome to the Joy Hour Show. I'm in the studio today with some great friends, and we are going to capture their story and have a great time expressing to you how important it is to be real, to be authentic, and to take our stories and turn them around to help other people. Today I'm joined by my wife, Lana Lyman. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
And Dustin Long and Leigh Ann Long.
Thank you.
So glad that you're here. We've been talking about doing this for quite a few months. And you've made a road trip to be here in studio, because in studio is always more personal than doing it virtually. So Dustin and I have talked about doing this virtually, and I was like, man, if we could do it in the studio. And a lot of that is because it's more connected, right? So there's tone of voice, there's body language. And so today we are just going to connect right here with you, our audience, and let you know that none of this is rehearsed. This is truly us getting to know each other. My wife and Leigh Ann just met in person, and Dustin for the first time today. And Dustin and I have mainly been in touch over the phone. And so they are based out of
Alexandria,
yep.
Louisiana, yeah.
Amen. And so I'm going to turn it over here for Dustin to kick it off. But they head up a awesome ministry, High Hope Ministries, out of Alexandria, Louisiana, that is reaching all over the country and probably outside of our country as well. I'll let him talk more on that, but I believe that this ministry that they are so involved with has impacted so many people already, but I think it's just the tip of the iceberg for what God is doing by taking their stories and others that they've done podcasts with. They have their own podcast, and they have their own reach of many, many other people that are doing the same thing, of sharing real talk about real life. And so we're here again to encourage you and challenge you as an audience to understand how important it is to have real discussions. And so share this with your friends and family, and I pray that you're encouraged today. Dustin and Leigh Ann, welcome again to the Joy Hour Show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Amen.
It's absolutely our pleasure to be here, and I'm glad it became a reality. And we look forward to whenever you come into Alexandria to having you on High Hopes podcast. So I'm thankful to see as many of these as there's no competition between, I think, as many, like you said, we all have different reaches, but I'll be promoting the Joy Hour. I'll be promoting anything like this that'll reach people. If we can reach souls, man, and just show people hope, like you said. If we can do that, it doesn't matter how it gets done. We just want to put ourselves out there and make ourselves available. But yes, High Hope was started, and we can talk about this a little later, about 2023. Yeah, it began. We've been doing a lot of, it started out doing a lot of one-on-one mentoring with, I was just mentoring guys that had been through what I'd been through, and you know, just kind of some behind the scenes stuff, dipped into a little podcast here and there. But we just recently started a huge revamp. I just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Have our own studio now, and so we're going to be doing some really interactive podcasts as well. And I say that because it'll be a podcast, and then whoever was the facilitator 2 weeks later will actually host a closed Zoom call. And God's connected us with a lot of great resources that'll be working with us. And so, but that began basically, I came back in 2012. Came back, I came home in 2012. And so I say came back because in 2001 I was a licensed minister and full-time student pastor and basically assistant pastor for church in Lafayette. And in 2001 I received just out of the blue a phone call from a pharmaceutical sales manager, and he said, "Hey, look, I saw your job," and this shows my age, but I saw your job on Monster, or not your job, your resume on Monster. And so I said, okay, I didn't know that it was on Monster. I was still in school, about to graduate. And he said, "Hey, look, would you mind meeting me for lunch and interview?" And so I said, "Yeah, sure." Well, I met him for lunch, interviewed with him, and that night he called and offered me the job, which is, my wife is in pharmaceuticals. It's everybody wants, excuse me, wants to be in pharmaceutical sales. It's so I just had a little. I didn't have. We had a baby girl, and she was about at this point 6 month old. So poor college student, and then student pastor. Just the money that was thrown out to me, the offer that was thrown out with company car, with everything. It was in the flesh, and for most people, a no brainer. But for me, with a call of God on my life, and having been entrusted with the ministry of these students, and just I didn't pray about it, didn't fast about it at all, and just left the church. And I remember we actually went on a vacation the week after I'd gotten this offer, and I told my uncle, that on that vacation what I planned to do, and it hurt him. It hurt him bad, because we were very close, but also that I hadn't come to him. So anyway, long story short, God, through the next 12, 13 years, allowed me and my family to have basically whatever you wanted in the flesh. I mean, great experiences, great trips, great, places to live. I mean, if we wanted it, we had it. And then I thought I could do both in the beginning, work a pharmaceutical sales job and fulfill my calling, and that proved to slowly but surely I just went places morally I never thought I'd go. I was partying, and I was functioning, but on weekends I just lived to go out and have a good time. And if it pleased me, then I did it, and obviously drugs, alcohol, and then relationships were all part of that. And I just, I never thought I'd go to those places. And so it all came crashing down about 2012. And I came back to Alexandria. Now I was broken. I had lost everything, going from having whatever you wanted to losing everything. Still kind of a mess in 2012. Moved back to Austin. Had a knee surgery, moved back to Austin, and then just kind of fell back into the same lifestyle. Didn't want to be back home in LA, because I just felt like such a failure and shame being back, having had this success, and then the shame of being in a church that I grew up with. And this wasn't anything that they made me feel. This was just what I was feeling. And so when actually they were just loving me. But I moved back and forth to Austin probably 3 times during 2012 to 2018, and just was kind of battling coming back. I was at a point, I knew I needed to come back and stay. I just didn't want to. And my kids were in Austin, so that played a lot into the factor. So I in 2018, I was, I had gotten a couple DWIs in Austin, but those got reduced, and so they weren't enough to scare me really enough to hit my rock bottom. So in 2017, I was actually, it was an alcohol related event. I won't go into that, but it was actually this time. Now I did plenty of things I should have got caught for. Probably should still be in jail, or, thank God he let me live through a lot of things. But this particular time, I was not guilty of what I was charged for, but what it did is it put me in jail for, I thought it was going to be 1 week until my arraignment or court date or whatever. And I could have bailed myself out, but, or I was going to, but my dad or somebody had to sign off for, they had, and my dad said, "I'm not going to do it, Dustin, not this time." And so, that hurt me. But I look back, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. The best thing. So I thought I was going to be there a week. They pushed my court date back for 2 more weeks. So it was 3 weeks. And I'm not jail material. I've never spent time in
I would
jail,
not.
but it was an experience. And God told me, I'll just tell you this. God spoke to, not audibly, but he spoke to me in the way he speaks to me. In that jail, he said, he said, if you think this is bad, Dustin, he said, you won't be able to handle the next time.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom, that woke me up.
Yeah.
That woke me up and woke me up quickly. And I spent the next 5 months because I was trying to get my probation moved to Louisiana from Texas, and it took a while. And so I was in this 100-something-year-old farmhouse out in Buda, Texas, that was 100-something years old and renting just a little small back room, and it was bad. But that period was, again, one of the best periods of my life. I call that place the backside of Buda, Texas. And God dealt with me, and I came home, and he began to restore and really work in my life. Because I told him at that point, I'm moving home. I'm going to submit to my pastors, my church, anybody, because that was always an issue with me, is submission.
Right.
And so I said, I'm gonna submit to everybody and everything I can, because God, I'm done. This is it, and I want to get back. And so that's a very short version of my testimony. There are some unbelievable things that God did in between, and just God moments. But so we started High Hope in 2023, and it was mainly to deal, like I said, with I was mentoring young men and young women who are not young women at that time, but young men who'd walked through the same thing, and started a nonprofit. And so now, and I'll let kind of Leigh Ann explain maybe her story and where God brought her. But God gave us new vision, and we can talk about that a little later. New vision that we just recently revamped, had a meeting, and I'm excited about what God's doing and is already doing, and is about to do in High Hope. So that's the quick version.
That's a beautiful version. And before I turn it over to your wife, just the one thing that stood out to me was what your dad chose to do at that time. And now I'm pretty sure you both work together in different ways and have a good relationship.
Fantastic relationship. And honestly, they had started in 2015 Hope Prodigal Prayer Ministry, which that's all over the world, and in 43 states, 30 something countries.
The name again?
Hope Prodigal Ministry.
Right.
And you can find them, I believe that's their website, but it's for families or friends of those who may have someone who walked away like I did. And it's a prayer ministry. They do conferences, but I have to give them honor, because it's because of them, A, that I'm home, their prayer and their fasting, but B, that God has opened a lot of the doors that he has even for High Hope. And the reason we call it High Hope is because I had put and like you and I both, Tom, I'd put my hope in getting high, not just drugs and alcohol, but in so many other things. Like I said, relationships, experiences. My highs came from all of those. But I read a scripture, and I think it's Proverbs 10:26 or 28, but it's the expectation or the hope of the righteous is gladness, but the expectation of fools will perish. And so I just said, God, and that really stood out to me when I first came back, and I said, so God is now my high, and he's my hope, and he's the only high hope. He's the only hope that we have. So that's where that came from.
I just think it's beautiful how you made that choice with your dad, because I could see myself, if I went to jail, which I would not do good in jail, but I should have gone many times. But if I was sitting there and my dad didn't sign and I had to stay longer, boy, what an opportunity for bitterness, for anger. And we all know a lot of men, and probably women, but we'll speak for men here, struggle a lot with the father relationship, or the lack thereof, with their earthly father. But that really does tie in with our heavenly Father. But obviously at that time, you had a choice to go either way. Either I'm going to be angry at my dad, or I'm going to understand there's something bigger that's going on. And just, it's a beautiful story.
Well, yeah, and look, don't think at the very first that I wasn't a little bitter and angry.
Right. Had to work through that.
I had to work through that for about the first several days, and,
Yeah.
and calling every time I would get a chance,
Uh-huh.
and just tell them how bad it was, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm gonna live, I don't know if I'll make it.
Yeah.
I'm dying in
I'm-
here.
Yeah.
Felt abandoned and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to applaud your dad though, because
That's all right.
that is the epitome of tough love.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes when an addict, that's what they need to hit that rock bottom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, our greatest motivation for human behavior for change is pain. And for a lot of people, that rock bottom takes a pain like that. But too often, a family member continually comes in and rescues and rescues and rescues. So, I mean, hats off to him, because that was probably a lot of what ended up saving you.
You're
was
exactly right.
his willingness to leave you there. And I can't imagine as a parent how hard that has to be to
Yeah.
do that. But if more parents would have that type of courage to be able to implement that kind of tough love, it would probably save their children a lot sooner.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exact, and like you said, I can't imagine the pain that it took for him to say that no, and even for my mom as a mom,
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
to know that her son was in jail for for 3 weeks. So, but you're exactly right, and that's we all of our rock bottoms are different.
Absolutely. All of us have a different pain tolerance.
Yeah.
Every person's pain tolerance is different, but it takes pain for change to happen. You know, the recovery saying, when your pain becomes greater than your fear, that's where change takes place.
Yeah.
And so everybody's pain tolerance is different, which is why you can see one person who it's just the slightest thing happens and they're like, okay, I can't do this, I'm going to change. And somebody else, it's like they have to lose everything before they're willing to change. Different pain tolerances, you know.
Sure.
But that tough love, that can make all the difference. I know with him, I actually had just finished reading Dr. Dobson's Tough Love and realizing that I have spent years enabling him, thinking I was loving him, which is what parents do as well with children who are alcoholics or drug addicts. Spouses do it as well in marriages. And when I read that, and that's when I finally started putting some boundaries down and putting that tough love in, and he started changing very quickly.
I didn't like that book at all.
But
the time.
it was a big part
Boundaries,
of,
what?
yeah, it helps.
Yeah.
So that tough love is so important. It's so hard to do, but it is so important.
You're exactly right. Yeah, because I had been bailed out, multiple times, and even in Alexandria, where everybody knows everyone, and I was doing things with the mayor at the time and the chief of police that, that if I got caught, I was with them. So, moving to Austin and then not having options and hitting rock bottom was one of the best things. You're right.
I guess my start of my journey is I was born and raised in Alexandria. I grew up with an amazing family. And then I guess I would say my parents were more so my mom, because she was raised in a home where her father was an alcoholic, and he was very hard. So like she had a wanting to control type. So then in those types of environments, when that type of dysfunction isn't healed and counseled, sometimes children can have the tendency to run the other direction, like that tight grip. So I remember whenever I made my decision to go to college, I wanted to go just far enough away so that they couldn't get in the car and drive. And they would have to tell me they were coming, And so I made the decision to go to New Orleans, and I went to Loyola University. Music has always been a big, huge part of my life, and so I got a really awesome opportunity. And so I went there, and I had grown up going to church every week, and as often as we could be there. I was also raised on a farm, so that is like I was alone and out on the farm a lot. But so when I had the opportunity to go, I made the choice. And honestly, that was probably the beginning of the start of me opening a lot of doors that in hindsight I should have kept boundaries, but curious kids, and you feel like you're missing out, and there's so much out there that you're missing out on. So that was probably one of the most godless times. I think I maybe I didn't find a church there, so I didn't really have community. And when you're in university and you're surrounded by people from all over the world and you're experiencing all these new things, you're like, oh, wow, there's so many things I've missed out on. And, you just have that feeling, and you start, and again, the enemy tries to plant these little seeds that, you're not surrounded by your community that's pouring into you and saying, hey, you need to be careful. You need to be careful. I opened the doors, and I willingly opened the doors. So I didn't have a community there, and I remember it being very difficult, but yet I was still marching down my path. And I was in New Orleans for about 6 years, and I ended up making a decision to move to Dallas. My brother and sister-in-law got married, and then they moved to Dallas, and then I'm like, okay, I am not really going anywhere in New Orleans. I feel like that laissez-faire lifestyle where anything goes, For me personally, I think I was like, I have to get out of here. Like, this is going to be the death of me if I don't, So I made the decision. I didn't pray about it, but I knew I needed to get out of New Orleans. So then I moved here to Dallas, and I actually started going back to church, but I was still kind of dabbling, meaning I wasn't all in. I was kind of like straddling the fence per se. I started getting involved in music ministry, but I was living double-minded. And so I was here in Dallas, and I had actually joined a praise team and was involved in music, and had really starting to try to let go of some of the things that I had been allowing in my life that I knew were not supposed to be there. And then I met a guy. And so I actually met a guy who's had his family in Seattle and Tacoma, which is very interesting. But yes, so he was originally from the New Orleans area, and he actually was living in Alexandria, and both my grandmas made a joke about, we're going to pray you home, we're going to pray you back. So then I decided to move back to Alexandria in hopes of me and this person getting married, and we could never get on the same page. And so I ended up leaving Dallas and moving back to Alexandria. And it's funny, we have our plans and we think we know how life is supposed to go, and then God has his plans, and they're not always the same. So that relationship didn't work out, and it was hard at the time, but in hindsight, you look back and you're like, okay, I understand why. I understand that wasn't God's will for me. So it's funny, my husband and I, we got married a little over 2 years ago. So
congratulations.
Thank you. I was a late bloomer. I didn't get married until I was 39, but I desperately wanted to. So, and again, there was big disappointments in that. You want to get married. Like most women want to get married and have a family, and in our fairy tale mindset, oh, this is going to solve all of our problems and we'll be whole whenever we find our person, right? Well, in that being the vein of what our human desires are, and it always seemed to happen right whenever I feel like, oh, I'm getting really close to the Lord and I'm making strides to move and push in the right direction, and then here coming in from from just seems like out of nowhere, like the enemy knows the cracks and the weaknesses of where what's gonna be the stumbling block, I guess. So again, I met another guy, and this person he was legally still married, and he was separated from his wife, and it started out so I thought innocently, but if looking back, I remember saying, this person's not going to be in a place to even get married or to even think about a relationship for at least a year and a half. But then you still flirt with it. So I ended up, I ended up getting pregnant out of wedlock, and I was 33 years old. So clearly I knew how that happened. And so there was a lot of shame with that. And, ironically, health-wise, I'm what you call a polycystic ovarian patient. So that is very hard for women that have that to get pregnant. So it was kind of like a double-edged sword of like, okay, it's a miracle in and of itself, but then this wasn't how I wanted a family to start. This wasn't how I wanted, So during that whole time, the pregnancy, it was challenging because it's something that you want to celebrate and be happy, but it was not at all how you wanted it to go. And I knew better. And I'm like, golly, Leigh Ann, you're 33 years old. You know how this happens. Like, you weren't born yesterday, So I carried a lot of shame. Like, I hid it from my parents and my whole family until I was about 7 months pregnant. And it was only because I couldn't hide it anymore, physically. And so that was a very big challenge. It was a very dark time when it's supposed to be joyful, but God was there and he met me in ways. And I remember driving down the road, like being big and pregnant, having a hard time, but like listening to Carrie Job and like worshiping in the car while I'm driving to work, and God moving in the car and it being so powerful. And, but yeah, it was a very dark season. And then that relationship obviously didn't work out. It was about a year and a half. And I think Eva she'll be 8 in September. Her father and I split whenever she was about 5 months old. So that was challenging too, being a single mom. And this was before Dustin and I got together. But so that was a really challenging time. And in that journey, though, it's funny how when you are like, I'm trying. It's funny when you're in those moments and you're like having a very deep prayer and you're just like in the point of despair. I'm so thankful for our pastors and our families that have loved us and prayed for us and covered us. Sister Vesta Mangan literally would, like in the moment of like where you're at your hardest spot, where you're like, God, I can't do this. I can't take this. This is too much. She would call or text message and be like, baby, God loves you and you are not alone. He is with you and he has got this. And just at the right, perfect time when you needed to hear it. So that was very powerful and encouraging. And okay, he does have all the details. And he is going to see me through it. And so stepping through that, I have one right here. Thank you, babe. Stepping through that, that was challenging. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my family's going to disown me. And they were awesome. I wished, knowing on the back end how they were going to be, I wish I would have not carried that so long. But, and that is one thing, the older I get and the more life stuff that I've gone through, I am so thankful for my family. They have been so loving. They have told me some hard truths, but they have been so loving and they've been faithful just as God has. And so, I'm thankful for my family and I give them honor for standing with me through the hard, embarrassing, tough stuff, and then stepping through all of that, and it's like co-parenting, and the struggles of that, and Dustin and I met, I always knew him. Can I say it? He's 10 years older than me. So I was always, I've known him since we've grown up, but he was married and he had children. And so he went his life path and then I went my life path. But I remember being little and being like, he's so dreamy. And I remember thinking he was so handsome. But, so yeah, we ended up reconnecting after all of that stuff happened. and all of his stuff that happened. And I'll let him share that at some point. But yeah, it was kind of funny. And it was again a God thing. We have a friend that we were both in our heart. We were both working with her, and she had been through a lot of life stuff, and we'll get to some of that. But she ended up taking her life, and through that, it was so hard for both of us. But ironically, through something so painful, that was kind of how him and I reconnected. He says I was hitting on him, but I actually had sent him a message asking about a sermon that our bishop, Anthony Mangan, had preached on a really powerful moment where God had spoke through our mutual friend, and she had called his mom in a time of prayer, and she had been praying and fasting for 70 days. Was that right? And in that moment, the Lord had spoke to our friend, and our friend called his mom and said, basically, Michael, stand up. So that was the name of the sermon. So I sent him a message on Facebook asking him, hey, I remember this, like Jamie had a thing, and I'm trying to find the sermon and I can't find it in the archives. Do you remember the name of it and when it was? So that was our initial conversation. So I guess I put it out there. So, but anyways, that was kind of how we reconnected, and going through and just looking at the details, it's been beautifully painful, bittersweet at moments, and God is still working in many situations, but the journey back has been really cool, and he is using some of the most broken places and making it beautiful. And I'm really thankful and really humbled and honored, even in like things with my work, and I'm in mental health. I'm a pharmaceutical rep for a company. Just even on the side of providers and patients, just in conversation, and how in the and where I'm at, I'm even able to talk about the Lord, and just someone that feels like they're in despair or just having a tough day, and life is just a lot, the way he's divinely orchestrating things. It's been very interesting and humbling and powerful. So I know that was a lot, and I hope I covered a good amount of to get y'all to where we are today. But yes, we got married 2.5 years ago, and June 3rd, 2023.
2023.
Yes, and so
best day of my life. Yeah,
we're still newlyweds. I guess I'm off, and I'm like, so yeah.
The interesting thing, though, going back to so when I came home in 2015, really moved back to Alexandria for, I think, I say really, but for the second time. Anyway, it was a Wednesday night. Here I am broken. I'm literally mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially just lost everything. Living back at my parents' house, which, I hear a man is 40 years old at that point. And anyway, on a Wednesday night, I was sitting by my friend at church. And like I said, I'm nothing who's going to want to desire or whatever. And sitting by my friend at church, and I see this beautiful girl in a red dress sitting by Sister Mangan, Vesta Mangan, on the front row. And so I'm like, man, who is that? Because it'd been so long since I'd seen Leigh Ann, and she was a little girl the last time. And he's like, oh, she's Leigh Ann, I believe, Leigh Ann Swanson, I believe, and she owns her own home health agency.
I did
blah,
own
blah,
a
blah.
home health agency.
Well, but the interesting thing is I told God that night at church, I said, look, God, if we're ever meant to be together, because I didn't think that was even going to be remotely. I said, if we're ever meant to be together, I said, I'm going to work on me. I said, I've got a whole lot I've got to work through, but I'm going to work on me. I said, but you're going to have to let her reach out to me I'm never going to reach out to her, give her my phone number. So when she did send that Facebook message, whatever the motivation was, I was like, okay, here we go. Here we
Your
go,
sign.
Lord.
She just wanted the title to the message.
I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
He never believes me. We've gone over this.
That's all he needed.
Mhm.
But yeah.
That's good. That's beautiful.
No, you're capturing your stories beautifully, and thank you for being open. Thank you for crying before I did or anybody else did. It's
just
beautiful,
came-
and that's
he
what we do
would've cried
here.
for sure.
I cry a lot, but it's important to have real talk about life. And one thing that captured my attention, Leigh Ann, that you said was, if you could have known on the backside how your family and others would have treated you and how it all would have unfolded, you would have opened up sooner during your pregnancy. And so I think so many listeners out there, you're going through a storm and you've made some choices and you've got into a spot where you're filled with embarrassment and shame, and my life wasn't supposed to look like this. And so you've put on masks and covered up the real you, and maybe people like what you think they like, the fake you, but I promise you, if you'll step out by faith, God will do the miraculous, and he will restore all the relationships, especially the ones that are meant to be.
Right.
There's a lot of people in our families, our churches, our community that have this understanding that things happen. We make choices, therefore things happen. But as long as there's breath, there's hope, and there's hope for families getting reconciliation. There's hope for marriages. There's hope for our children. And so I think it's so beautiful already just to hear your story, both of you, and how these lives have been brought together just 2.5 years ago. And you're in the beginning of just really taking the ministries to the next level with the broken pieces, but there's still pieces. But it's amazing, right? How God has put those all back together. It's not like he took some of the pieces and threw them in the garbage. He took all those pieces and made this pottery, this bowl that now can hold content and pour into others, which I can tell already both of you are doing with your stories. So I hope you're writing books with your
It's
stories.
funny that you say that.
You need to be.
That's been spoken over us at some point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you use the illustration, and I love that you guys have the puzzle piece and the connection piece. I think it was right before we got married. I think we were engaged, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
were at camp meeting. I think it was 2 summers ago,
Yeah, Louisiana camp meeting.
and it was Brother Shatwell.
Oh, yeah.
And we were sitting there and worshiping, and it was beautiful, and they were sitting behind us, and I didn't really know who they were. And he said something, and my daughter Eva was sitting there playing with the puzzle or whatever, and she dropped all the pieces, and you know how we are, we're like, oh gosh, they're making a mess in church, like I gotta pick it up, whatever. And he gave a word, and he said something about, you have been trying to fit these pieces of your life together so well, but God has a purpose and a plan, and he's putting the pieces together for his purpose and his plan. And so it was just so encouraging and necessary in that moment, because life can be overwhelming and you're trying to piece things together, and it was very encouraging. And so puzzle pieces have a very special, near, dear part to my heart, because it represents like a tapestry, and like how God is literally intertwining things that he wants. And yeah, maybe we try to put this piece in this little cubby hole and it's going to fit there, and we're frustrated and it doesn't fit and we're trying to force it. I'm the queen of that. And so, but again, on the back end, knowing that it didn't work for a reason, and that he's orchestrating it for his plan and his good and his purpose. And sometimes we just need to get out of the way. And that's really hard.
Right.
It's hard with a type A personality. But yeah, so thank you for sharing that and saying that. It means a lot to us.
Well, we all have different pieces, different broken pieces and puzzle pieces for a reason, to reach the huge population that doesn't know hope, that doesn't know God, doesn't know his healing power. And so I think the more we can capture in books, in podcasts, in every way we can, some of or all of the details of our story, then it will draw those to us and us to them on being able to say, Hey, on that topic, I understand. I totally understand. You know, there's a lot of topics maybe I don't, but maybe she does. And so each of our stories are so impactful if we use them. What was your thoughts, darling, on the tapestry comment?
How did you know
I
that my
know.
mind was just going? Wow. Thank you so much for that opening. No, actually, I wrote about this in my book. We visited Europe several years back, and what stood out to us the most in all of the castles that we toured while there were the tapestries. They
The
were
Abraham ones were
huge,
beautiful.
floor to ceiling, wall to wall, in these massive castles. All of these tapestries, and a few of them, you got to see the backside. And on the front, you see these beautiful images woven, all of these sceneries, and just gorgeous. But on the backside, they're messy.
Yeah.
And threads everywhere, and you can't make heads or tails of what it's even supposed to be. And it just, we were still in the middle of all of our journey at that time, but it got me thinking about how much our life is like that. And recovery, especially, is a lot like that. How it's just God is weaving every thread, if you will, of our life, just like those tapestries. And on the backside and the recovery side of things, it's messy. It doesn't make sense. We don't understand why this thread is here and this thread is here. And it's just, we don't get it. But when he's finished with the work, it is the front side, and what the world sees is something that everyone marvels at. And so when you mentioned that about tapestries, it reminded me of that. I say it a lot more eloquently in my book, I promise, but it brought that to mind. So thanks for bringing that up.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Amazing.
love that.
So I know we've got about 20 minutes here to continue to talk about all kinds of things, but I do want to capture kind of where you are now and your heart, your passion, of course, how people can get in touch with you or your ministry, just as much as you want to share with the audience. There's people right now listening all over the country, all over the world, that are going through different things, and they have family members going through different things. I think they've heard our stories, but feel free to tap into the stories more. But just tell the audience too, like, what do you have going? How do they get a hold of you? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are what we really started focusing in on is a lot of and it's kind of been a theme today is everybody is going through something, some kind of pain, some kind of dysfunction, some kind of trauma. Especially it's ramped up. It seems like it's ramped up post COVID, and then just with technology and social media and political climate. Anyway, so as I said before, High Hope was literally excuse me, and I was flying to places and sleeping on apartment floors with guys who were going through some struggles, and still have a heart for stuff like that, but realizing that that's a pretty hardcore and time consuming, especially for married and young. There was calls 2, 3 in the morning and 12 or 13 times a day, which, look, I love, and you can ask Leigh Ann. I'm passionate about helping people and things like that. Really has my heartbeat. But I really wanted to kind of, and we even prayed and fasted about it, and we really wanted to kind of broaden our spectrum. And so we decided to just build a community of not just us working one-on-one, which is important, but build a community of people who are capable in certain areas that we might not be. I had been encouraged by a pastor, one of the pastors at POA, to consider going through the executive coaching program at Townsend Institute. And Dr. John Townsend, who's phenomenal, all his books, and Dr. Henry Cloud, who is now, I think, a fellow out at Townsend. But anyway, he encouraged me to check that out. And my age, going back to school, I didn't know. But then I guess at the beginning of the year, God really started dealing with me as far as just new vision for High Hope and how we do that. And so I entered Townsend University. I'm working on my master's for executive coaching because I want to, as I mentioned earlier, our 4-step process is relationship. Everything comes through connection. We know if we lose that connection, that vertical, we're going to we're gonna go south and somewhere the other. But also with people, because and you know this, Lana, as much as anything. I mean, connection with people is vital to the body of Christ, not just to the body of Christ, but anybody. I'd find myself in the worst states when I was isolated in Austin or even here. You know, the enemy has so much time to work on your mind and everything. So we really wanted to build a platform of connection with people who are currently going through trauma, or it could be mental health, anxiety, depression. It could be just single moms. Leigh Ann's been a single mom. I haven't. I have expertise there, but substance abuse, of course. We just any kind of trauma, really, grief. You know, so we were like, we're going to build a community, have podcasts, and then also have a team of counselors, clinicians, psychologists, who are, if we're not capable in the second phase is recovery, if they're still in active trauma or addiction or whatever, they're doctors that deal in addictionology. God's blessed through Leigh Ann's job, but just connections for people who we can kind of not pass them off, but let them kind of get stabilized during this phase. And then restoration is our third phase, and that's where I really have a heartbeat and a passion, and that's to coach these men and women of, okay, I'm sober, I'm stable now, I've come out of this abusive relationship, whatever it may be, and this counselor's really helped me, but where do I go, and what is my God-given purpose and calling? What are my talents and abilities? Because you get sober and you don't have a purpose. And I kind of found for 10 years, I'm like, God, I know you don't repent of your calling, but what does that look like? And can I even get it back up and preach and be a license with with the organization again? God, what is this going to look like? So I floundered for probably 8, 9, 10 years, just really trying to figure that out and praying my heart out and just seeking God. But so I'm like, if I can help young men and young women really get through that and walk alongside them as they formulate their own vision, and God gives them their own vision and their path to get there. I'm not there to form it for them. I'm just a coach. Walk alongside them and help them to realize what those talents and abilities are and optimize them. And then the fourth phase is release, and that's where don't stay in this program for 30 years and keep trying to. God has a purpose for you. Get out there and do it, and then help somebody else. So that's really what we're our vision for High Hope is. And there's a lot more long-term visions that God's kind of opening up. But yeah, they can reach us at highhopeministries.com, and also they could email us at highhopeministries@gmail.com. So that's our website, and we're excited. We're beginning to our new revamped podcast. The first one's going to come out, I believe, August 22nd, with a guy that God has just brought back, and his testimony will blow you away.
Amazing.
Anybody who knows Ben Bland on Facebook and what God's doing and where God's taking him, it's a phenomenal story. So that'll be, and then 2 weeks later, he'll facilitate for anybody that watched and wanted to interact directly. He'll do that. So that's where we are. And then we have these connection weekends that are awesome. And I'll let Leigh Ann maybe kind of talk about that, because it's really neat how that came together with a mutual friend of ours, and then just what we're going to be doing with that.
So, as a little kid, I've always wanted to, when I grew up, I wanted to be a singer. And it's funny because Eva wants to do the same thing. So it's funny how genetics are strong. But in certain capacities, when you're in life and you're like, okay, God, you give us certain gifts and we're going to be held accountable if we have to use them in some capacity. But then when you're in your career and you're trying your best to juggle all the things, like how can you do that full time and get, so it's the balance. And that's been a struggle. That has been a struggle in the past for me. Like, and so really just kind of out of that heart longing and desire, this has naturally unfolded. And so we go to church with an amazing family. They're the Fishers, and Terry Fisher, he is a very talented musician, worship leader. He tours with a very well-known Christian artist, Charity Gale, and she is so anointed. And so him and I have done some music stuff together, and stuff for our wedding, stuff for just family stuff. And we really just kind of prayerfully, we hosted them at our house originally, and just in prayer, and our God vision, our God dream was, and again, Terry has his own way of how the Lord spoke and laid this on his heart, but it's called House to House. And so we have a Gather and Grow weekend, but the initial start of it is someone in there, either a part of the church or a church member or someone who the Lord has laid it upon their heart that they just want to love on people, and just have maybe their neighbors or maybe a friend from work that's just going through a really hard time, or maybe someone that's gone to a particular church and like just got crushed from messy people just being in the thick of things. So inviting them and having them and just coming into a very non-threatening, non-churchy environment, and just encountering the Lord and having like heartfelt, genuine worship, doing that together, praying, being and just letting the presence of God just be in it and be open and be ready to just receive whatever the Lord has for you in that day. And then breaking bread with them, and then like having a conversation and just loving on them, because a lot of people, again, we're going back to the connection piece. So many people, again, wear the mask of, I got it all together and we look good on Facebook and all these other places, but inside they're so empty and they are crying out for connection, but they don't have it. But they don't want anybody to see it. But yet on the inside, it's just like a shell of a human. And so just having an outlet where someone can feel really welcome and open, and maybe just have an opportunity to be reintroduced to the presence of God. And so that was really, and it's so neat how whenever you get in those environments, and because that was how Jesus did his first works, was in the small, intimate environments of people's homes. And he would minister to them, and he would talk about parables, and he would pray for them, and miracles would happen, and then they would have a meal together. And it was beautiful, and it was so captivating, but it was real, and it was raw, and it was just organic. And so that was really kind of, I guess, the heart of where it was birthed. And so I get to practice guitar and sing and do all the things that I like to do on the back porch when I'm by myself. So that was kind of how it kind of came to fruition. And so that's the first part of the Gather and Grow weekend.
It's a Friday night.
It's a Friday night. Or if it's a long weekend, maybe a Thursday, whatever works out. But yeah, so that's the first night, and you have people to either, it could be even to the church hall or wherever it made sense. And you have people come, get loved on, have a meal together. And if, the Lord is like really pulling and drawing them to know, hey, we're going to be here on Sunday, if you guys want to come to church with us, we'd love to worship with y'all again and maybe introduce you guys to some people that could maybe you could have a community and have a connection with some people that are going to love you and support you no matter what. So, and then I'll let Dustin talk about the Saturday because that's more his wheelhouse.
So yeah, so that's the Friday night, like she said, and the whole point of that is to try to connect people to get them to Sunday morning. It's a soft connection, and she and Terry do a great job of just, it's very soft, slow acoustic music, and I'm telling you, the presence of God really comes in there, and doesn't matter where they are, who they are. I've seen people just weep, and God really touched. But then Saturday, Terry and Leigh Ann would just jump in and maybe work with the local church's praise team, whoever their praise team is, and maybe they can kind of, give a little bit of their areas of expertise. Like Leigh Ann said, Terry's all over the world and touring and plays everything, but super guy. But during that Saturday, wherever we are, whatever church we're at, the pastor would ideally have been identified 4 to 6 people that I can meet with that day to just have an initial coaching session with, just try to establish a connection with them. And if they chose and they enjoyed it, and I'd kind of lay out a plan going forward. And if they wanted to do that, well, then I would continue to meet with them via Zoom, or if they're local, but most are not going to be. But I would continue to coach people long term for the ones who really thought that would be beneficial. And then finally on Sunday, me or one of our team members would be given just an encouraging word that Sunday morning to the church, as Leigh Ann and Terry, or some of our other worship team members on High Hope would join the praise team, and we ended on Sunday morning, and then maybe meet with a group of 2 or 3 people, or whoever. If somebody has a burden for something like High Hope, okay, we're not just going to leave you, but here's what you can do. Here's a process you can do going forward to implement into your local church, because we want to have satellites and because we can't get to. I found the flying and the traveling, and it's a lot. And so if we can have people locally who can just catch a hold of this burden, this High Hope, that's what we're just trying to establish now. So that's the Gather and Grow weekend that we're very excited about. Really, really excited about.
That sounds beautiful. So this is something you would travel to other churches?
Yes.
And host for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They would find that also on your website?
Yes, they can go to our website and check that out for more information, and then they can reach out via the website and book us however they want to do that. So
I love it. The word that comes to mind is a purpose. You mentioned it earlier, and it's been on my mind a lot recently, is how important it is for a person to have purpose, to know that they're called to what they're doing for the kingdom. But a lot of times it's hard for people to see themselves like God does, or like even someone else does. And so it's beautiful. It sounds like you're speaking into people's lives to help them navigate what that might look like. I know so many times growing up, I kind of thought there was just a few ministry positions, right? There was just a few nonprofits, or there was just a few opportunities. And I'm not a singer, although I've tried before, and people leave the building pretty quick. That's not my talent, but thank God for others that do. I'm working on writing a book. I won't say that I'm a fluent author right away, but you can stretch yourself into different purposes, but also the stretching can happen from a coach, from a counselor, from another friend that speaks in and says, you got this, you can do this, but also too many people, they do get freedom from something. They don't lock in on how important it is to use that, because it's probably going to be a lot of their purpose. That pain didn't happen for nothing.
Right.
And so the thing that I see happens is people sweep it under the rug because it was embarrassing or brought shame. And then they don't really lock into a purpose, and short time later they relapse either on the same thing or something else. So continue to do what you're doing. So awesome. If you're reaching and looking for purpose, it sounds like Dustin, his wife, my wife, and I have a lot in common with knowing how important it is to use our stories, because they've brought purpose into our lives. and how important it is for you, for family members that you're working with, to find out what are those talents. And some people do have just one, and some have two, and some have five, but you're sure not meant to bury that one talent, because the master is going to say, no, you had that talent, but you got to develop that. And that's also so important with the last thing I'll say. I'll turn it to you and we'll close out here. But when a man or woman lacks purpose, they seek to fill their day with pleasure and comfort. And our world has so many options that make us comfortable and bring pleasure. But I've found in my life that the cravings for pleasure and comfort went away, reduced first and then went away, the more I got locked into my purpose. I know why I'm on this earth. I know why I'm here. I know why I went through what I did. And it's such a beautiful spot. It's just been this last couple of years for myself that I've known my God-given calling and my purpose. But a lot of coaches and mentors helped me, and my wife helped me, of course, find what that is. So that's how I'm going to pass the mic over as we close out today. Lana Lyman?
I don't have much to say. I'm encouraged by hearing y'all's story. And, I love when I hear other people doing what we've done, taking something you've been through, using it for a purpose. Like he said, I believe that anytime we go through something that, God never intends to waste that pain. That there's always something that he wants to do with that. And so I'm encouraged today by hearing what you have done with your pain and how God's using that with High Hope Ministries. And we just wish you all the best and hope that the viewers and listeners out there today will tap into what you are doing and that it can be an encouragement to them as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Leanne?
You said something earlier, and you used your hand, and you were talking about a pottery, and I wanted to share. Are you familiar with the Japanese art form Katsuji?
Yes.
Okay, so when you said that, I literally had a vision.
I have a bowl in
We
my
have a
office.
bowl.
Okay, I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, basically, it's the art form of where something was broken, and then the artist, puts it back together and puts beautiful elements, gold, silver, whatever, copper, whatever, puts it under fire and reheats it, and then makes it absolutely beautiful. And it is way more valuable after that and way more beautiful, but it had to go through some things. And so whenever you were using your hands and you made the analogy of the potter on the potter's wheel and putting that together, I literally had the vision of that beautiful Katsuji. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly.
I think we all say it different.
I know.
I've said
Who knows?
Kintsugi.
You
but
might be
it's
right.
something
I don't
along those
know.
lines,
I
yeah.
need
Google
to. Yes,
how to
exactly.
pronounce.
Absolutely. But yes, I had that vision of that beautiful art form.
I
and
did too.
And I really, really, really firmly believe that when we allow the Lord, even in our broken places and our brokenness, to take the messes that we've made,
Yes.
or the messes that not he has caused but allowed us to step into,
Right.
and then we let him take that and make something absolutely beautiful from our hot mess express.
Right.
So that's literally the vision that I had. So I wanted to share that, and just, if that encourages one person
Right.
to keep going and to not give up, and to, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Yeah. And even
And-
for those out there that, like in my situation, he made the messes. I found myself living, when you're a betrayed spouse, it's really hard because
yeah.
you're living through the consequences of someone else's actions,
Yep.
and you're reaping the consequences of someone else's actions. That's really hard. And not to say that I was perfect, but you know what I'm saying?
Pretty close.
Thank you, dear. But I love how you brought that up, because I was picturing the same thing when you
Yeah.
said that. And it's ironic, too, that my whole life, before I even met him, my favorite Bible verse has always been Job 23:10, which is so crazy because I never went through anything difficult as a child. I had a great childhood. But Job 23:10 is, Job is talking about, like, I look everywhere and I can't find God, and I go here and there, whatever. And then verse 10 says, but he knoweth the way that I take, and when he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold.
Amen.
And it just makes me think about that bowl with all those gold cracks, filled in, and how even when we are suffering through the consequences of someone else's actions, that God can still fill in those cracks of our life and those messes with that gold tried by fire, and our life can come out as something so beautiful.
Amen.
So that can be an encouragement to those out there listening, that maybe you're not the one that's made all the mistakes. It's someone that you love and care about, but your life can still, be something beautiful on the other side of it. And God has a purpose for the pain,
Very much
regardless. Absolutely.
He always has a purpose, and that's beautiful, Lana, that you brought that up, because and one of my favorite scriptures that kind of popped out to me in 2014 when I was really starting to kind of try to plug back in, and I used this a week or so ago in Sunday school, but he gives us the bread of affliction and water of adversity to teach us so that we might know him. And I can understand that, because I can understand that happening, him allowing that to happen because of my actions and consequences. But then my parents didn't deserve a lot of the things that it put them through and the consequences it put them through, which they were great and they loved that. I don't know that there's another set of parents in the world, but yes, God allowed me some consequences and some things to be orchestrated that I can understand his reasoning, because I messed up. But, there are good people that have to go through some things as well. And it's all to teach us that we might know him. And it's one thing, it's trust. It's trust in him. And that, there were lessons from my parents. Every bit of my mistakes, it pushed them into a new dimension of prayer, and even fasting brought them to another level. There's so many good things that because of my mistakes and consequences that came out of all of that, if you ask a lot of the people involved, and look, let me tell you, there is regret. There was shame. God has worked on me. Even at what I've had to put my kids through, or what I did put my kids through, there's still a lot of regret and shame, and they didn't deserve any of that. But there's so many stories of how God has taken the bad mistakes and done great things in others. And a lot of that time, and I like to say this, a lot of the time, the things we go through are most times about us, but it's always for somebody else. If I have to go through something, it may not be for me. It may be God's allowing me to go through this for somebody else to see him work in my life and my trust and my faith. So there's always purpose in the pain. And I thank God for everything he walked, because all of this, Tom, me and you sitting here today, Leigh Ann, us sitting here today, if it weren't for our hope in God, and if it weren't for Jesus Christ, we would not be sitting here today. So all of our stories here, it's just because he was gracious enough to author a beautiful story and let me be in it. And I hope that someone is encouraged by all of our stories, just one person. So I would love to team up with, and Tom and I have been talking, and any way we can team up, I will, because God needs to hear truth, or people need to hear truth about what God's done in our lives.
And God needs to hear it too. He needs to hear us talk about it.
You're exactly.
Revelation 12:11 we talk about often, but he gave us a roadmap right there in that verse, how to be overcomers.
Exactly.
And they overcame by the blood of the Lamb. God died for us. And the word of our testimony, which is our job. And third, and they love not their life unto the death.
Until death.
Means it's more important I share my story than I worry about what other people think or say of me.
Exactly.
And so I'm so thankful that you're able to do that. And you think about, because of what you went through and the choices you made, the ministry your mom and dad have been involved with, and how many thousands and thousands of families that's impacted. It's called, again, Hope for Prodigals.
Hope Prodigal Ministry.
Hope Prodigal Ministry. Look that up, folks. Again, I know there's lots of moms out there. Keep praying. Never give up. Dads, keep praying. Never give up. As long as there's breath, there's hope. And so I encourage you, reach out to us, to them. Thank you so much to Only Source and End Time Ministry for hosting this and always having everything set up. It's such a privilege to be able to capture all this for the purpose of helping others find God and find hope. It's not about us. It's just we're sharing our stories. If you are interested in sharing your story, reach out to me. This is the Joy Hour Show, where we capture real talk about real life. Be encouraged. God loves you, and so do we. We'll see you again soon.